Hello, and welcome to the beginning of the end. Wind and Truth arrived, Wind and Truth has been read, and there are thoughts to be shared. The only other video I made this for, in terms of an individual review, is Oathbringer. For anyone who watched that video, they'd be aware that Oathbringer had a lot of interesting positives and negatives for me. And keeping up with that, we're here to talk about Wind and Truth. I was going to do one on Rhythm of War, but then time got away from me. Then I read Wind and Truth and was like, a lot of this is symptomatic of stuff that's also in Wind and Truth. So why not just bang it out all together and just do Wind and Truth? If you do enjoy, please do like, please do subscribe. It's been probably like a few days since I finished Wind and Truth. I wanted to sit on it, and then also like Grace has been off, or I've been working, so I haven't had a chance where she hasn't been in the house because she hasn't finished it yet. And the last thing I want to do is inadvertently spoil her in any way. So I'm going to give general feelings and then go into specific characters. Um, General feelings is that I really enjoyed the book. I gave it 4 stars. I think I think it probably is, other than maybe Words of Radiance, it's the best paced Stormlight Archive book that's been put out. For being the longest one, the structure in terms of it's important to say this is sort of spoilers. It's the 5th book. I'm not even gonna. We're not pussyfooted around it. The structure of 10 days created a really strong momentum for the book. But it feels so bad to say, but something about, because the way the book was laid out, it felt meticulous to me. And because of the meticulous nature, I found myself not having an emotional reaction apart from one particular scene. And that was a very light emotional kind of like, oh. Otherwise, I was dry eyed, stone faced through most of it, enjoying it. But it's the reason why I could only give the book 4 stars is that even in something in Oathbringer, where I'm very mixed in terms of some of what he's doing, there's so much emotion throughout it that isn't there in Wind and Truth. I read to have emotion drawn from me, and the fact that all the other books up until this point have had a moment that just absolutely rips me apart. Um, like the emotion of Kaladin turning back in Way of Kings, the arena scene in book 2, Kaladin breaking down in book 3, Teft in book 4. Like, there are emotional points that really resonate. Wind and Truth for me, I read it and just really enjoyed it. And I feel like the further people are getting away from the book that I've noticed, that tends to be the way people are lining up. As much as I'm saying that, so I'm saying that we've got a positive and a negative straight off the bat. But my main positive from this book is that I enjoy seeing people have so many different opinions on this book. To me, that is exactly what I wanted. It's what I was hoping for, because it signals that Sanderson made choices in this book that were brave or not what people were expecting, conveying information in a way we weren't expecting, taking a chance essentially, because there was a line we could have gone down where every choice was safe, and we ended up at a point where people would probably be more happy, but not necessarily have like this. I don't know. To me, I am glad that people are having such mixed feelings, because it means he made a choice. It means he really went for it, because he has so many different goddamn beta readers, alpha readers, gamma readers, all these people, that he gets a feeling for what's going to happen. And the fact that he put stuff out that he probably knew wouldn't necessarily play with everyone, is good for me. Overall, a lot of the things that happened were what I expected. Belief that I'd had for a while, which was that Shallan's mum was a herald. It was signposted very early around this idea of like claiming honor and everything, and it was signposted very clearly that Dalinar and why did I say it like that? And Kaladin were going to be the ones to pick up said power, um, which I was a little bit disappointed in that because it was so clearly signposted. He may as well have fucking written this boy's going to be a herald and this boy's going to be like honor. That's it. Like it was. The thing I appreciated is that throughout the journey, it very much questioned who was going to end up with it. But the fact that we ended up with those two felt like we were led on a route of guessing and not knowing and uncertainty to lead up to the answers that we all thought going in, which I feel like that won't play as well on reread, if you get what I mean. I appreciated that Sanderson leaned into his very clear inspirations, even if they're not for me. You know, like the JRPG, the real sense of like the anime and the JRPG of it all, while not for me, I'm like, it's cool to see him just like have this idea forever and just be like, okay, I'm still going for it the way I wanted to. Two things to mention very early on. I did not enjoy the start of the book, personally. I found it boring, to be perfectly honest. And I love the quiet starts of the other Stormlight books. It's just very particularly in here. To me, it felt like this awkward preparing for the end. It felt like Sanderson knew that it wasn't going to be a lot of these people's last goes. And so he was like, I don't want to set people up for this feeling of like, this is it, this is everything, and then not deliver on it. So you kind of get this limp kind of like, yeah, see you later, boys. Well, nice knowing you. And I was just kind of like, what the fuck is this? Why are we acting like we're the biggest lamos in the fucking room right now? Like, this is meant to be the emotional bit. This is people saying goodbye, possibly forever. And it was just kind of like, nice knowing you, bud. Stay good out there. And I was like, what the fuck? So I did not enjoy the beginning of the book. For me, the book began and continued with the first character I want to talk about, which is Adolin. Adolin carries Wind and Truth the same way Navani carried Rhythm of War, in my opinion. Without him, this book would be mid. I thought his interior, like progression, his interpersonal, and then also politicking, all of it really grew in this book. A character that I have really loved in the past, but also felt like, when is Sanderson going to give him the time he needs and deserves? Because a lot of stuff has been skipped over with Adolin, a lot of things that, to me, needed to be dealt with. You can't... I've always thought that the Sadius death was horrifically just brushed over, and it's like, whatever. And his relationship with his father post finding out about his mother, they were both things that really needed to be tackled. And I really liked him being by himself, removed from both Shallan and Dalinar, be by himself, and have that chance to really explore himself. And his relationship with Yanagorn was awesome. My favourite in the book. Yanagorn, when he steps up and everything, that they were the people that got me emotional. Like that one scene with Kaladin, Adolin and Yanagorn was immaculate to me. That's the one that got me. I loved them. I'll be perfectly honest, I expected more from Adolin. This is one of the things that I felt like when I was talking about the idea of who's going to pick up honor. To me, there's no, even if you disagree with him, there's no one who's more honorable in the series than Adolin. And that human version of honor. The Tanavast of it all. This idea of having this, like, making emotive decisions like Tanavast does in that flashback we have. The impulsive decision to kill Sadius, for instance, I was like, that fits. Tanavast and Adolin fit together. Where I thought we were going to have a twist. I thought it was leading to a twist, which never came. And that's one thing that I was disappointed in. I felt like, as much as I love the idea of the unoathed and everything, um, I just, it felt like Adolin was being brought to a point of something else, which was, yeah, I would have loved to see something like that. So they're the first people I want to talk about. I loved Adolin Azamir. I thought that was phenomenal. I really enjoyed a lot of the fighting scenes. There were a lot of fighting scenes because he was pretty much, that's the only conflict other than the Shattered Plains, which was there but nowhere near as much, that had conflict. And so for a book that's trying to maintain this momentum and have some action, it really came down to Adolin and Azamir needing to have all of that. But it still allowed a lot of time for those comments. And yeah, it was Yanagorn and Nora when she's just like, we did all this to you, like we sacrificed you, essentially, we put you in this position. And the fact that she just loves this child, like, she is like this adoptive mother who, like, I really loved that whole storyline with them too. And it provides, like, they're nice secondary characters that really got to have this inflated presence, that I think Sanderson does really well. Like, the same way he took Navani and elevated her in Rhythm of War, I think we got Yanagorn to be like this. I'm really excited to see where he goes in the second arc. Kaladin and Szeth, who were characters that I enjoyed. I think they will be characters that are looked back on probably with the most critique the further we get away from it. Because, let's get it out of the way. Kaladin felt good, first line of the book, and he pretty much maintains this really strong positive momentum for the entire book. And he's kind of like, yeah, it's not like I'm not over it, but boy, am I handling it better. And it's like, you tried to commit suicide yesterday. It was yesterday, bro. And I understand that he let go of Tian's death and Tef's death and everything, but that doesn't change the fact that the way this book kind of addresses that is like, personally, I felt like Kaladin trying to commit suicide in Rhythm of War was distasteful and unnecessary to begin with. If the scene didn't exist, this transition would be much smoother and I could get along with it a lot more. But the fact that Sanderson made the decision to have that character attempt suicide again, and then the very next book that we see them, it begins with, he felt good and he's plodding along. And it's been a day? That's insane to me. So that's one thing. I really liked Kaladin and Szeth's like, relationship. Szeth became a very interesting character. I wanted it to go further in the sense of, I felt like we spent a lot of time for them to make a smaller distance than we needed to, in the sense of like an interior journey. It worked a lot better when Nail came along, in my opinion. Also, I get it. Szeth's going on his Pokemon challenge. He's defeating all the gym leaders. Fair enough. My brother messaged me saying that Kaladin is the Brock to Szeth's Ash, which is hilariously accurate. I will say I didn't personally resonate with either of their characters in the way that I was hoping to going in. That's what I mean by I read the book and really enjoyed it, but did not emotionally connect the same way I have previously. Alongside Adolin and Yanagorn, my other favourite characters were those involved in the spiritual realm. Dalinar, Navani, Gav especially, and then Renarin, R'lain, and Shallan. All of that was extremely strong. That had to be. It's the core of the book, really. As much as this is Szeth's book, it could very easily be like the idea of Rochar's book, essentially, as it unravels all of its mysteries. It could be the Herald's book, really, with the amount of times we spend with them. To go through those systematically, let's begin with Dalinar and Navani. Loved having those two together because the last time we'd seen them, Navani hadn't gone on the growth that she had in Rhythm of War, and so it was nice to have those two together, seeing each other more as equals and having that ability to work off each other. Now, when I see seeing each other as equals, I mean that Varney has now elevated herself in her own mind. I'm not trying to make some slanderous comment about Dalinar or anything. But yeah, I personally really loved that relationship in terms of how they navigated everything, how they relied on each other. And then Gav. As soon as Gav went into it, my brain was like, that's the champion. Because we did not have... Moash doesn't exist in this book, really. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, Gav's definitely ending up. And I think a few people in my chat were also had the same kind of idea. I think it was pretty... Another thing that I wasn't shocked by, if you get what I mean. Like, when something was introduced, I was like, oh, yeah, this is where it's going. And we ended up there. And I really enjoyed it. I actually thought that the contest of champions with Dalinar and Gav together, and that we'll bring in Taravangian later, but I thought that the contest of champions was, what's the word? Transcendental enough to be what I was hoping for. I did not want it to be two men hit sticks. I wanted that kind of grand, epic scale of mind games and like a feeling of eternity, a feeling of a godly aspect of this feeling of 4D chess, as it were, people maneuvering other people, putting themselves in that place. And I really enjoyed everything to do with that. The secrets that were revealed, I know that some people aren't happy with how clunky some of the exposition was directed to the audience. Things like that. Personally, I struggle to find a way that I could imagine it being done better in one book. That's really what it comes down to, is that a lot of this... I've always said that I don't think the Heralds had enough of a physical presence through the earlier books, and a lot of the information we could have already had a gleaming of, or like some things in our heads, instead of all of it coming pretty much in this book. That's why I've always said the Forsaken are better than the Unmade and the Heralds, even though I prefer Stormlight Archive. So yeah, that was really good. Navani was really good. Gav was really good. Shallan really came together. I really enjoyed her throughout the book. For someone who I've been frustrated with a lot, do I think still that a lot of her stuff should have come far earlier? 100%. That comes down to the structure of the series. Because of the fact of Lost Metal, spoilers here, because we get this idea of the Ghostbloods and Kelsier have to come in with the Lost Metal in this time frame, I think that Shallan's progress got delayed by like a book or two because of that. So I'm glad to honestly be fucking done with it. Let's just keep going. I like the idea of her being pregnant in Shadesmar now as this kind of lone figure. The Ghostbloods still in contact with the Ghostbloods, but now actually in a position to understand stuff rather than where we've been. Yeah, like I said, I'd already predicted that a Herald was going to be her mother. I didn't know which one it was going to be. It turned out to be Channa. It was really good. Another great scene. I really enjoyed their resolution. I enjoyed Relaine and Renarin a lot. They were another highlight of the book. Ones that once again didn't make me emotional, but I enjoyed throughout. I think that they were a lot of both fun, and then they had a lot of progress. I know others, myself included, after Rhythm of War were like, come on, you need to do this, you need to commit, in terms of having on-screen gay relationship, etc. And that was nice to actually have it come to fruition. Really enjoyed them. And I enjoyed pretty much everything to do with the spiritual realm. I thought it was a really I liked that it had been kept from us. We've experienced the physical and whatever Shadesmire's called, I've forgotten in the moment. But to transcend and go to that third one, have them untethered, have this kind of real stakes, the idea that they could be lost, where they could end up out of time, out of sync, like what happened to Gav. And it was nice to have that risk and reward and that whole situation going on, because it gave stakes throughout. Like I said, I think transitioning between different visions throughout the different days provided a really strong movement to the book as well. And it was really gratifying. Like, that's the thing. I think I felt really satisfied with experiencing all these things and finally feeling like I was getting to know the heralds more, and like personally rather than the stories and everything, because we just haven't had it. And I like the kind of the ultimate payoff to the idea that Kaladin's going to help them. I just think at least a couple of them could have been around more and more significantly, rather than these kind of shadow pieces moving around. That's me. I know people are going to disagree with that, but whatever. Venli was fine. Didn't really have anything with Venli. Same. This is probably going to be a hot take. I don't think people are going to enjoy this, but I thought Sigil was fine. Sigil to me is just another example of Sanderson having this thing of like, what if I took this and was like, what if they thought about it like Science character? He already does that with the magic system. He already does that with fucking everything. And having another character piled on top of everything else that's like, what if I think about this, but like a scientist? Like, I understand that Sigil's always been that way, in the sense of like he wanted to do the tests, etc. on Kaladin. But having that as your central viewpoint for the Windrunners, I don't like it. I don't like when Sanderson like indulges in those characters personally. Like, it really works with Navani, because guess what? She's working in science. You know, like when you write the actual magic system using physics, it makes sense. I can allow you to indulge there and really get involved. But Sigil, with the whole, like, I don't know, just comparing everything to science all the time, I was just like, be a scientist then. Okay, like, okay, bro. I don't know. I didn't like it. But great payoff with him sacrificing the his bond. Fantastic. Do I think that it didn't work as well because then we followed up with Dalinar doing it? Absolutely. That was a mistake in my opinion, having that happen. It was a big mistake in my opinion, because it deflates that moment with him later. It deflates the Stormfather being like ripped away and everything, because you're like, oh yeah, that okay. Like, I felt like if that was the first time it had happened, it would have been so shocking and unexpected. But when it was happening, I was like, oh, he's gonna get rid of the bond. Like, we just had that with Sigil, and it seems like he's building up to give away the bond. That's another example for me of this just not quite, it's meticulous but not quite thought through in my opinion. Or, to give it another example of the fact that he's said that he's written however many versions of it, it feels like he mismatched these different versions of it, but it never quite worked as a linear with whatever ones he chose, and so he had to cobble which one felt best together. And so certain things don't gel well, because like maybe Sigil did sacrifice in one and then Dalinar didn't in the other, and then maybe Sigil had his spren killed in one and Dalinar does sacrifice in the other, but when it came through like switching endings and stuff, we end up with it both, and then it's like, okay, I don't know whether anyone else felt like that. That's personally how I felt reading it. Two biggest disappointments in the book, let's just nail them. Yasna was very disappointing to me. Not because of the outcome, but... And the problem is, I know that it's being done to set up her second arc journey she's going to go on. The problem for me is that, well, I really enjoyed Yasna at the start with her feelings about Wit and the everything that was going on there. Yeah, Yasna was disappointing to me because we have never spent long enough with Yasna to justify the ending we got here. We have spent time with Yasna, we have experienced it, but we don't know Yasna enough, and we don't have that much to be able to. I never felt emotionally invested in that scene in terms of her conversation with Taravangian. I was interested, really interested in her having a conversation with Taravangian, because outside of Dalinar, she's the one that we know has the most relationship directly, based on the first book of her being a Carbrand and everything. But I don't know, it just didn't quite work for me. We didn't spend enough time of the book with her anyway, like this individual book, to have the payoff, and we haven't spent enough time with her in the series to get the payoff. So I understand that that will come back in the second half, and it's going to be like a redemptive kind of arc for her. It's going to need to be, but that didn't quite work for me. And the other is the total lack of Moash. He's around. He's been made into the Stormlight version of an Inquisitor in terms of being able to view investiture. Nah, I was disappointed to not have much Moash. I didn't want Moash to be the champion. 100% didn't want that. Was happy without it. Was actually really happy with the chapter with Taravangian being like, no, that's Razor's shit. I'm not removing your feelings. You've done what you've done. Deal with it. Was happy with that as well. And I know that Moash and El are going to be this movement moving forward, this part of like Taravangian's army that I am interested in. Let's not get into the fucking Blackthorn, alright? Let's not get into that. Let's just stick with Moash for now. But to me, Moash is one of the most integral characters in the Stormlight Archive. Like, when I think about the Stormlight Archive, he is there. And I understand that we now have Kaladin and Moash are going to be key players, probably in at least reference in the second, like at least the beginning of the second arc. I don't know, I felt like there was just such an utter lack of him, and he made no real. I know he killed a couple of people, R.I.P. Leighton. To me, there's not a lot of Windrunners left. There's not a lot of Bridge 4 left, and there's not a lot for Moash to do in this book. And so I'm glad that he wasn't there rather than pottering around. But I wish he'd have had something to have like this key element of the Stormlight Archive in like every single book. You know, it's not like he's disappeared before. He has been integral throughout, and to have I hated what Sanderson did with him in book 4, so I was really hoping in book 5 he would get the time, and I didn't need, like I said, I didn't need him to do anything. I would have really liked a couple of chapters here and there dotted about his experience of getting the spike and him dealing with his emotions and coming together, and what's he's going to do, and can he get over it, and should he go after Kaladin, should he do something else, should he stay where he is, can he move, will Taravangian let him go? I would have liked the idea of him becoming catatonic and wanting to leave and not do something, and the idea of he's now like in an abusive relationship where Taravangian won't let him go, or like won't take away his feelings but won't allow him to disconnect from the connection they have now. Something, anything to really explore, but instead he rocks up, fights a couple of times, and then we're done. Really disappointed with Moash. But the star of the show, in my opinion, the one who absolutely lived up to what I was hoping for, without a shadow of a doubt, was Taravangian. Taravangian was so good. It was a genius choice to split the book into 10 pages. It's 10 parts, to give the time to have those extra interludes, to give Taravangian the time to progress, to learn, to change. He was a constant presence in this book. I loved him. I absolutely loved him. There's only one thing I didn't like about about Taravangian, and that was that Sanderson chose to do the same thing that he did with Moash, and I hate it. It's such a simplistic, stupid way of approaching villains, in my opinion, which is I just need to prove the other person wrong. It feels so childish to me. Like, I don't know, like the idea of Moash being like, well, I have to make Kaladin kill himself because then I'm right and I have to prove that I'm right and he's wrong. I don't need to be on the winning side. I just need Kaladin to lose. And then Taravangian being like, he's a fucking god, literal deity, being like, I need to make sure Dalinar knows just how wrong he is. I'm just like, oh, fuck off, you lame-o. You're so cool otherwise. You're such this foreboding, but like the imagery around him being like frail but powerful. This person who has wisdom and emotion but passion and all of these things. And the way that the description around his godhood was done with what he's dealt with from what was given from cultivation. This idea of hyper intelligence but with hyper emotion, and how he feels as the holder of odium was so well crafted and so well done. I loved it. I felt like Taravangian, I knew it before. I've loved Taravangian throughout, and Rhythm of War, he was one of my favourite characters, but Taravangian is genuinely, to put it the one way, to me, Yanagorn, Moash and Taravangian are the reasons that I am looking forward to Arc 2. They are it for me. And Taravangian is the only reason I'm even remotely interested in the Cosmere as a whole. Because this is a Cosmere book, 100%. This is the most, like, we end up on Scadrial at the fucking end. I think this is it now. Okay, this is actually a big thing. The writing. Sweet Mother Mary of Moses. What the fuck is he doing? Like, I do not understand how you can put this much effort into crafting this meticulous story to me of plot point by plot point, pace, perfect, let's get through it. And it's written like a fucking 16-year-old picked up the pencil with... we went backwards in time. It felt like I was reading an early Sanderson book again, with fucking M dashes up my arsehole and superfluous fucking commas and misdefinitions of words and all kinds of fucking basic shit that is in this book. I could not fathom that I was reading some of the sentences I was reading. There's one in particular early on that I fucking highlighted. Is Shallan talking about Mraize, and there's a sentence, and it's fucking dog shit, to put it nicely. It's like, that's a first draft. Look it over. So I don't know what his editing team's doing. I don't know whether he's just not listening. I don't know whether they're scared to go at him as much as they need to. But whatever's going on, they need to really fucking fix it up, because I cannot read another Sanderson book at this level of writing. I physically will not be able to. To put it bluntly, I'll be done with Sanderson if I have to read another book of this quality. It's a joke to me that he has this much money, this much people working for him, and this is what he puts out. The writing of that quality is a real kick in the fucking teeth for me. And that's the real battle that I have, is this complete butting of heads of the actual art of writing, the writing itself, and the story being told. The story is fantastic, told in a way that brings it down and removes emotion. That is a clusterfuck in my brain to get around. So that's why I couldn't give it anything more than 4 stars. Do I enjoy the pacing and the overall story of it more than Oathbringer? Yes. Oathbringer is better written and has far higher character moments, has these emotional outbursts. The juxtaposition between Dalinar not giving his pain away, the emotion that brings out of you, even if I have problems with the conclusion of Oathbringer, that emotion is palpable compared to his literal fucking death. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Let's keep going. Like, what the fuck? What was that? I found it a bizarre reading experience. A completely bizarre reading experience. Shout out to Cultivation, glad you got to be around more, even if you've run away now. That's going to be interesting for other series probably. Wind and Truth, which is an overall really good experience in my opinion. 4 stars. I've spoken to a lot of people about it now. I tend to feel like even if people disagree with my rating, they agree with a lot of my points. I think a lot of people on reread or when they think about it and get further away from the reading experience will shift slightly. I've already seen people say that they're shifting to a slightly lower rating than they did when they first finished. That's natural in my opinion. I thought I was going to be done after Wind and Truth. If it had a more conclusive ending to this first arc for all of the characters, I would have been done, I think. Because I'm not sure about the direction the Cosmere is going. I don't really care, to be perfectly honest. When I read Mistborn Era 1, when I read Way of Kings, I had never heard of the concept of the Cosmere. It was not what I was reading it for. And as I've got further into it, the more that I've had mid-quality books, like if you remove Stormlight Archive and Mistborn Era 1, 2 series that I was reading for themselves anyway, Mistborn Era 2, mid. I gave Warbreaker a very mid rating. I gave Elantris a very mid rating. Pretty much outside of the 2 series that I loved and was already reading before hearing of the Cosmere, all I've gotten is context. There's been nothing that I have loved. And so the fact that we're going on this, like, going towards a sci fantasy, never something I wanted from either of the series anyway. I don't know. I don't know whether I'm done with Sanderson. But the fact that all these characters are still there makes me want to continue. But I feel like for the next arc, you're going to have to have read everything before it. Like Elantris and Mistborn Era 3. Do I want to? I don't know. And as a result, we're going to leave it on a cliffhanger, I suppose. That we are done with the first Stormlight Archive arc. It was good. 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. Didn't love it. That's fine by me personally. I thought it was a really solid ending. Sets up a lot for the second half to be excited about. Will I be there for it? I truly don't know. If you did enjoy, please do like, please do subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments because I'll be very interested to hear. And as always, have a nice rest of your day.